either through psychics and psychic connections or through actual seeing ghostly apparitions of their child, and these stories are very common. In fact, if you have a friend who has gone through this experience, chances are they will not tell you about these moments, but they will have experienced them. And you will have a high probability of that. And if you have the sensitivity and the authenticity to ask them genuinely, if they have seen visitations from their child since death, you might have an extremely moving experiences in listening to their stories. But that aside, it's still full of grief. It is certainly easier for those parents who have had those type of visitations, whether you believe they're authentic or not, whether you believe in life after death or not. They have a sense of the parents saying, I know, they still exist. They're still present. They're still aware. They're still conscious. They're just not listening. Often that'll take the sting away to some degree, and they have a reason to move on. Pamela Yount moved on in her life, and that was one of the ways she did it, is that she found the connection with her son afterwards. She also found a way to be wiser and more productive and more functional. A friend of mine who has lost a child due to traumatic illness has taken those particular experiences to campaign for the well-being of other individuals that might possibly also be suffering. And that is one way to do it, is to become involved in how to press on. Pamela Yount, for example, could have joined the many parents who have had their children die to AIDS and be able to walk that cause confidently, that it would have a tremendous impact on other parents as well. Well, let's take a moment to listen to Courtney Walker. Courtney Walker is a country western singer. He has composed a beautiful tune called The Weaver, and it basically talks about how grief is woven into the fabric of our lives, and events we cannot control are woven into the fabric of our lives, and we have got to be ready to respond to the degree that we do not have control over every variable that walks into our life. And you know, I'm a big believer that we have a lot of control, and we need to take charge, and we need to make our lives happen the way we want and envision them to do. But there are those times when events happen that are horrible that we do not have active control over, because we are interfacing with a world where there are things outside of our control. And how do you deal with those things that are woven into our lives that are full of grief? And Courtney Walker has dealt with tremendous grief in his life, a loss of a very loved individual whom I knew as well, a beautiful, beautiful human being. I'll let him tell his story to you one day, hopefully soon. I want you to be inspired as he talks about how he copes, how he sings about how he copes, things woven into his life that were not wanted. And for him, he reaches out in faith and also realizes that when we go into the Christian faith, that Christ himself lost his life and his mother had to deal with that. So contemplate the severity, the broad nature of his title, Mournful Circumstances. Courtney Walker and The Weaver.
And I, a simple friend. and the shuttles cease to fly, shall God unroll the canvas and explain the reason why. The dark threads are as needful in the weaver's skillful hand as the threads of gold and silver in the pattern he has planned. Yes, my Lord is a weaver, and I a simple thread. He weaves me into his kingdom with the precious blood he shed. Yes, my Lord is a weaver, and I a simple thread. He weaves me into his kingdom with the precious blood he shed. He weaves me into his kingdom with the precious blood he shed.
Thank you, Courtney Walker, for sharing that with us. We're going to take the next little bit here to just help the parents because you've gone through a lot. And if you've tuned into this particular show, then it means you've reached out for help, and thank goodness that you have, because there's no way to walk through all of this on your own. Oh, please, goodness, no. And many people do find a lot of comfort in their types of faith, and to be quite honest with you, that is a very common, and authentically the research is really clear that, yes, reaching out into faith tends to help people cope with horrible disasters more than any other intervention. So again, whether or not you believe in such things or not is not as relevant as those people who find themselves cursing and yelling and screaming at God, and at the very same time pleading for help to bear the burden. In addition to being able to join those groups of people, the grief and bereavement classes and groups that are available to you, don't hesitate. Don't feel like it's an act of pride. Don't feel like it is an act of weakness to be able to reach out to other people, but instead feel like it is an act of courage where you purposely say to yourself, you know what, I want assistance in coping with this. This is too big. It's huge. It's enormous to have lost a child. In addition to it being absolutely enormous and grief-stricken, something that you need from other people to help you with, I also know that there are people that just simply cannot understand God. And therefore, as a consequence, you don't reach out because you don't want to have to live with listening to other people's fake platitudes or fake resonance. People cannot understand what you're going through. And dealing with that sense of loneliness and complete isolation and what you're going through is, again, part of this process you need to break through in joining those people who have gone through it. And even then, if you go through those groups or those study groups or those online chats or whatever where people have, they're going to go through it differently than you have. Your recovery time, the way you recover, the way you approach it, how you have to deal with the loss of your child is going to be your own particular journey and venture. That is not a pleasant one, and it is nonetheless your process. And the process that you go through is going to be your process. But here, let me give you vision for what might be your future and your goal. One, you will never lose your love of your child. Two, you will never forget who your child is and what your child has meant to you. Three, you will always remember those times where you wish that your child were there for Thanksgiving and Christmas and birthdays, Mother's Day, Father's Day, having just gone through Father's Day before this show. You will remember that there were those times that you wish your child were there. In fact, every day you'll be reminded that your child's missing. If you have other people, loved one, your spouse, children, that are dependent on you also for emotional support. Do not forget that they need you there, and that the sharing of the grief and not the isolation of you from your grief or you from their grief is important. To be able to cry together, laugh together, cheer together is extremely important. But now what do you do with the guilt? Well, first, if you were responsible or if it's something you could have done, see if you can do it for someone now that's still living. Learn from those experiences and become wiser, such as Pamela Yunt was talking about. Put your lesson into action and mobilize being able to be a better person now if you were somehow flawed for what happened. And if you were not really flawed, there was genuinely nothing you can do. So you have to live with the experience of forgiving yourself for being imperfect and not powerful enough to protect your child from everything. And your child is, after all, only there for us to participate in helping, but not necessarily to be able to control every variable in your child's life. Your child was, after all, born to their own independent existence, and you've played a major part in their opportunity to do so. Next, I really do think that individuals that go to well-known, well-substantiated psychics or spiritual guides, I really have over and over since parents get a tremendous amount of relief from having those sort of interfaces. And I don't know many psychologists that would actually recommend that because it would be taken as very odd. But since I have seen that be so curative to people being able to move on, I do suggest you do that as well. Now, in moving on in your own life, there's going to be those times when you want to laugh, you want to go off and be productive and proactive and be successful and go on with what goes on in your existence as a human being. And the truth is your child would want that for you. A child that loves you and wants you to move forward, if that child is looking out of heaven itself and looking down at you and says, hey, Mom, Dad, move forward, move on, that's exactly, that's exactly what they would want for you. But what I do find is that parents often feel like they're not allowed to give themselves such a beautiful experience as moving on with life because they still need to maintain their grief, because their grief is still a very big part of them. But as they move on, they realize it is a part of life. It's woven into your life, and your life still moves on. And as strange as it seems, there will be times when you want to laugh and love and succeed and progress and be focused on something so very different than your child. And that will be just fine. But it is something you have to adjust to in your own sense of things. Well, this is Dr. Carol Francis. I'm a clinical psychologist. I've been working with parents in bereavement for 32 years. It's never easy. It's never easy. But it is a part of many parents' life. I hope it's not a part of every parent's life or all that goes on in your life. But for those of you who tuned in, we grieve with you. We are bereaved for you and with you as well. And we want to make sure that you know that we are there as you move on in your life without your child. The best of care, and until next time. Dr. Carol Francis from Torrance, California, signing off.